It's just now 12:30, so welcome everyone and good afternoon. I'm Pat Courtney Strong here on behalf of the Capital District Regional Planning Commission and the Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board. Welcome to the fourth statewide webinar for the NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities Leadership Round. Thank you all very much for your interest in this topic and on our previous ones. I'm very excited to be here today to present today's webinar on community choice aggregation as a high impact action in the Clean Energy Communities program. I'm really glad to be joined by Brad Tito, Program Manager for NYSERDA Communities and Local Government, Jeff Demansky of Hudson Valley Energy, Sue Hughes-Smith of Rocktricity, a CCA administrator, and our panel of municipal leaders and experts who will be describing their community's CCA path. We'll introduce them shortly. We're going to send today's slides to everyone who registered for this event. And if there are questions of yours that we don't quite get to, we will send those around for answering by our panelists, and we'll get them to you as soon as possible. You can use the Q&A feature of this webinar. You can access it by rolling your cursor over the bottom or the top, depending on how your computer does it. But we don't respond immediately to questions that are posed there. We collect them and then we answer them at the end. This webinar, as all our webinars are recorded and is available on the Capital District Regional Planning Commission's website. So let me turn it over now to Brad Tito of NYSERDA.
Thanks, Pat. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brad Tito. I'm Program Manager for Communities and Local Government at NYSERDA. Thank you for joining us today. Slide. So,
yeah. Brad, I made an error. I was going to show the agenda, and then I'm going to show the lovely faces of everyone who's with us today.
Okay.
Susie, if you wouldn't mind advancing through those. We have our speakers, Brad, Jeff, and Nancy. This is the order you'll be hearing from them in. Nancy is Supervisor Town of Mamaroneck. Next slide. And then Robert Alberti, Town of Clarkstown, Deputy Mayor John Wadich from Lima, and Sue Hughes-Smith, as I said, from Rocktricity. Okay, back on track, Brad.
Great, thanks, Pat.
Yeah, next slide.
So, and next slide. So New York has probably the most aggressive climate and clean energy initiative in the nation. In 2019, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act was passed, and it calls for 100% zero emission electricity by 2040, including 70% renewable energy generation by 2030. Next slide. Governor Hochul recently increased the solar goal to 10 gigawatts of solar by 2030. That's enough to power 1.7 million homes. Today's solar market is extremely active. 2021 is on track to be New York's largest year yet for solar installations. And you can see here on the slide, these are the various CLCPA goals. So we've accomplished a great deal, but we have a lot more work to do. The state can't do this all on our own. We need all levels of government, the private sector, and the public to engage in a coordinated and sustained effort to achieve these goals. Nearly 200 years ago, Alexis de Tocqueville described local governments as the foundation of democracy in this country. And the reason is, local governments are closest to those it serves. Local elected officials, members of sustainability committees, conservation commissions, community volunteers, you imbibe the spirit of your community, and it's really your duty to improve its welfare. And that's why we're here today talking about community power programs. And just imagine for a second a world where our communities are powered with 100% clean, renewable energy. That's a really important objective, and CCA can be a giant leap forward towards realizing that vision. And here's the thing, it's something that local government officials need to authorize in order to make it happen. And it's required that you conduct a lot of local outreach and engagement as part of the program. So it's really designed to be a community-led initiative. And that's a very powerful idea. But whether it's stretch energy codes or LED streetlights or electric vehicles or putting solar on the closed landfill, local governments are already providing exactly the kind of leadership we need to tackle our most serious energy challenges. Next slide. And that's why NYSERDA launched the Clean Energy Communities Leadership Round earlier this year. So the question is, do you want the benefits of clean energy, but you struggle with tight budgets and limited staff? Well, if so, Clean Energy Communities is for you. Next slide. So to date, 672 communities in New York State have completed more than 2,300 high impact actions. That's more than 18 million New Yorkers. Over 90% of the state's population live in communities that are taking action through this Clean Energy Communities program. Actions that save money, grow the economy, and move our society away from fossil fuels. And there are 373 designated clean energy communities. And it's just a testament to the hard work and dedication of community members, elected officials, municipal staff, and volunteers across the state. Literally thousands of people are involved in these efforts. And Clean Energy Communities provides grants and free technical assistance from a statewide network of coordinators. And we'll put a link into the Q&A, or we'll get it to you afterwards, some information about how you can find your community, your coordinator, because they provide clear guidance on a path forward for what communities can do. So do take advantage of them. Next slide. Now, these are the high impact actions that local governments can take to become a designated clean energy community and to earn grants and recognition through the program. Communities receive points for each action they complete, and then they can redeem those points for grants. And let me just point out that community choice aggregation is the highest point getter on the list. And there's a reason for that, which I'll get into in a few minutes. Next slide. Now, CCA allows local elected officials to choose where the energy comes from for their community. It's a program to purchase power in bulk for virtually all homes and small businesses within a participating jurisdiction. And if your community wants renewable energy, CCA can help make that happen. And all eligible customers are automatically enrolled into the program. It's an opt-out program. This is the defining characteristic of CCA. Customers are automatically enrolled, and then they can choose to opt out. Now, the city, town, or village government, they pass a local law to authorize CCA. With the help of a CCA administrator, they enter into an energy supply contract on behalf of local residents. And again, this is all done in conjunction with community outreach and education. Selecting an administrator is probably the first step. And we offer an RFP template, a request for proposals template in our CCA toolkit that can help you find an administrator that meets your local needs and priorities. And we'll put a link into the toolkit in the chat, or we'll get it to you afterwards. But there's some useful information in there that you can use in developing your own solicitations for CCA administrator services, if that's the direction that you want to go. Today, there are about 150 New York communities that have passed a local law to authorize CCA. That includes 20 cities, 66 towns, 59 villages across New York State. So there's a lot of people that thought this was a good idea, so they're moving forward. Today, more than 70 municipalities have fully implemented CCA and are currently receiving CCA electricity supply. More than 70% of these communities have chosen 100% renewable energy as their default supply. And so roughly 150,000 homes and small businesses are receiving electricity supply through CCA today. Now, the potential to reduce carbon emissions is significant. It's because you're taking this huge electrical load, consisting of thousands, in some cases, tens of thousands of homes and small businesses, and you're switching them over to zero emission electricity. In local governments that have completed climate action plans, that electricity is a major source of emissions. And CCA communities can claim major reductions in their carbon footprint. So to put this into perspective, according to the 5 cities energy master plans that were prepared by the New York Power Authority a few years ago, just as an example, Syracuse, electricity accounts for 28% of all community greenhouse gas emissions. In Buffalo, it's 22%. Rochester, it's 21%. They're already doing CCA. In Yonkers, it's 18%. They're on their way to doing CCA early next year. So by switching to renewable energy, these communities would be able to claim major progress towards state and local clean energy goals. I mean, think about it, a 10, 15, 20% reduction in your carbon footprint from this one green initiative. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity and one that is available to your community as well. But renewable energy is the foundation. The vision for CCA is achieved when we capture the economic benefits of community solar, of energy efficiency, of heat pumps and electric vehicles, demand response, energy storage, using the power of numbers to build market clout, negotiate better prices and terms. That's what's going to help move the needle on climate change. Next slide. So chief among these opportunities is what we call opt-out community solar. This is where, with the authorization of the local government, CCA participants, again, homes and small businesses, are automatically enrolled into community solar or other community distributed generation resources, also called CDG. The electricity generated from the solar farm is fed into the grid, and this reduces the amount of fossil fuels needed to produce electricity in New York. So once a home or small business is enrolled in a community solar project, they typically receive 5 to 10% discount on their electricity bill. I think Jeff is going to go into showing you how these discounts appear on your electricity bill when you are part of one of these programs. But the key factor here is scale. We're not talking about signing people up one by one, which is very expensive. Opt-out community solar allows CCAs to enroll hundreds or even thousands of people at once. So if residents don't like it for whatever reason, they can opt out without fee or penalty. But this significantly reduces the soft costs associated with solar, makes the economics of solar all the more attractive. It's also helping drive investment in jobs right here in our local communities. So look, if you're willing to consider CCA for your community, NYSERDA can help. Please do not hesitate to take advantage of our clean energy community coordinators and the free technical support and tools and resources they provide. They can definitely help you get started. And next slide. Here are a bunch of other things that you can offer as part of your CCA. There's just a lot that can be accomplished using this kind of community power program. And you just see here some heat pumps, some energy efficiency programs, some solar for all, which helps low-income customers. See a demand response app that folks are offering in the Sustainable Westchester CCA program, energy efficiency, renewable energy. It's all here. Okay, so please, thank you for inviting me here today. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. This is my contact information, and I'll turn it back to Pat. Thank you.
Terrific, Brad. Thank you for painting such a really clear picture for us. All right, next up we have Jeff Demansky. He's the Executive Director for the Center for Economic and Environmental Partnership, and he directs the Hudson Valley Energy Program. Jeff's team is working with the Hudson Valley Community Power and Rockland Community Power Partnerships as the local program manager, providing program support and guidance to cities, towns, and villages in community choice aggregation. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks so much, Pat. I get to wear 2 hats here in the state. So I play a role through Hudson Valley Energy Program that Sue will describe, a local program manager for active CCA programs. And I also get to be on the state team for the Clean Energy Communities Program as a subject matter expert to help people understand what CCA is. And so I've had the pleasure of really, I think, thousands of conversations with folks about what CCA is and what it's not. And so what I'm going to share with you is one slide with a lot of animation as I walk through it, that takes it from the other perspective down, as Brad said, to provide a 101 to understand what it looks like from the customer perspective. And to do that, my constant pursuit of a good infographic, that's what I'll share next. So please go to the next slide, and we'll start it out. And so this is a lesson on the utility bill, understanding what it is. And this is an area that people don't often think about. People don't necessarily know how to navigate their utility bill. And so I think that it's a bit of a Where's Waldo opportunity here. One, to understand what your utility bill is, that it's more than just paying the electric company and that's it. There's actually 3 sections of the utility bill that I'll walk through. And there's a Where's Waldo aspect in that we're going to look for 2 of the tools that Brad talked about that are part of what I use the analogy of CCA, community choice aggregation, as a Swiss Army knife, where there's a lot of tools in there that can be used by a municipality that enables it. And the 2 main tools that Brad talked about are this group buying club enabled by the town for electricity supply, and what can be done for accessing in a very easy way community solar for the community members and the communities that do this. And so we're going to look at the bill, and we're going to look for where this electricity supply opportunity lives on the bill and where these solar opportunities live on the bill. And before we dive in, I'll just say one last thing, that these 2 main tools of community choice aggregation are opportunities that are available to community members that are not in CCA programs, to all utility customers in New York State. They can do this individually. They can look for an alternative supply option. They can enter into a community solar arrangement or put solar on their home. One of the wonderful aspects about community choice aggregation is I term it as a gift of the municipality to cut through what can be a lot of decision hurdles and confusion and complexity around energy market decisions, to make it easy for people to take advantage of the good opportunities that are out there. All right, so let's dive into the 3 sections. And the first one I'll talk about is the delivery charges section. So Susie, if you could advance a couple of buttons there, and we'll see that when I talk about the utility bill, the generic version of the utility bill is in the middle. And there's the delivery charges section is at the top, and it has line items that if you look at the detailed page of your utility bill, there are a number of line items in there. Now, the delivery charges section is the section by which the customers pay for the infrastructure, the wires, the poles, the meter on your house, to deliver electricity between where it's made, the source or the supply, which we'll talk about in the next section, and the customer. So this is the infrastructure to get power from where it's made to the customers. In this way, your utility company is like FedEx or UPS or the United States Postal Service. They don't make the package. What is not included in the delivery charges is not the production of the energy or the electricity in this case. It's getting it from someone who makes it to the customer. The choices are on the far right for each section. So the choices in the delivery section for a customer, there are none. This is how the utility company makes money. And so there is no alternative for customers. The good news is, though, whatever choice, whether it be through a CCA program or individually, that are made for supply and or a solar decision, which to preview lives down in the payments and adjustments section, you don't lose that relationship with the utility company. So they remain the company that takes care of your power outages. And you can go to them if you have trouble with your billing and the like. So they remain, and that's what they get paid for, to get the power to you reliably. Now, down in the supply section, if we can press the button for me, these are the charges that also have a number of line items in this section. And this is how customers pay for how their power is made and where it's made and the cost of making that electricity. Those line items include, if you look at the second bullet, a rate in dollars per kilowatt hours. And that's the middle column there. That's dollars per kilowatt hour. And that is multiplied by the number of kilowatt. I'm sorry, that's the one on the far right, the way it's formatted now. The middle column is the number of kilowatt hours for how much electricity a customer uses each month. The delivery charges section and the supply charges section have that similarity in those line items where an amount of electricity in kilowatt hours used each month is multiplied by a rate, $1 per kilowatt hour. And then within each section, it's totaled up for whether it be delivery charges or supply charges. There are choices in the supply section. If we look on the right, you can only pick one. It's like going into a restaurant with a fixed price menu. You can only pick one of the options. The default option in New York State when it comes to supply, predicated on what I said, where the utility company pretty much only makes money on delivery charges. They're not allowed to make money on supply since deregulation went into effect in the late 90s. But the default situation, if a customer doesn't take advantage of the supply marketplace that was established by deregulation, number one is the default choice that the utility company will make that choice on behalf of their customers, and it's a pass-through cost. And then there will be the appropriate line items for the supply charges to be passed from the payment of the customer to the supplier. But there is a private market opportunity. Number two, anybody can take advantage of getting into a contract with dozens and dozens of supply companies that are out there, often called ESCOs or energy supply companies. And that is a private contract that somebody could jump into to designate how much they want to pay for that electricity. Or often people are doing it for renewable purposes to support renewable production. So they can designate where it's coming from with an associated cost and how it's produced. For example, Green Mountain Energy is one of the more common ones that facilitates that. Now, as of 2016, a third choice was offered to communities then through a community choice aggregation program. This is something that, again, as Brad said, enabled by a community passing a local law to do it, but then it becomes the new default choice. And this is the buying club for supply, where an aggregation of communities get together to offer a choice. And it is typically a fixed rate, which is very competitive, chosen through a competitive process for a supplier. That is typically a multi-year benefit, a multi-year contract that has no contract for the individual community members. So it is allowed to be the new default, the opt-out that Brad talked about, but it is something without restriction on the community members. And that's by design of the order. So one of those choices is what people in a community choice aggregation community have available to them. So that is for again, the paying for electricity you're using each month, which is different than, if you go to the next section, Susie, please. The payments and adjustments section includes credits for the opportunity to take advantage of solar opportunities in the state. If you have a system on your home or business, an on-site system, or if you subscribe to an off-site system, a community system for electricity production, those credits live down here in this section. And notice that there is not a number of kilowatt hours or $1 per kilowatt hour rate in the payments and adjustments section. Your arrangement for producing electricity and taking advantage of that is not based on how much electricity you use each month. It is a credit based on how much your portion of a solar field or the solar on your home or business generates each month, which is based on your historic use, your past average use. It is not based on the amount of electricity you're using each month. In this way, it differs from supply. So your solar production benefit is not your supply. And that's a distinction that we often find it's really valuable to make for people so that they don't get confused between the supply buying club aspect of community choice aggregation and what is offered through a community solar opportunity. So to visit the choices that are available in the solar section, 3 choices here. Number one, a customer doesn't have to do anything about solar. They don't have to put solar on their home or business. They don't have to lease or buy a system. They don't have to subscribe to a virtual ownership of a community system. Or people can do something about that. They can buy or lease a solar panel, or you can't do more than one of these. You can be a virtual owner through community solar. And this is a local, within your utility territory, offsite solar farm. And the general way these work is that it's a guaranteed percentage discount, a credit, a reduction of the charges in your electric portion of your bill. And it can be done privately, as I said, the third bullet, a private contract, or very powerfully, and again, the community leaders help the community members by cutting through the decisions and the confusion to offer an opt-out through community choice aggregation. So CCA lives in both the supply charges opportunities and the solar opportunities that are in the payments and adjustment section. So the last line underneath my table, that in New York State, CC is a way that you can do electricity supply and or community solar as a benefit for your community members on an opt-out model. And I hope that helps in terms of giving the other perspective from the customer's view. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Finally, there's a good reason to really understand your utility bill, right? Okay. All right. Switching over to our next speaker, we're delighted to have Supervisor Nancy Seligson. She has been town supervisor for Mamaroneck since she was elected in 2011. The town is both a New York State designated climate smart community and I believe a clean energy community as well. She's the co-chair of Sustainable Westchester and the New York co-chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Long Island Sound Study. Nancy's a past president and board member of the nonprofit organization Save the Sound and chaired the Westchester County Committee on Non-Point Source Pollution of Long Island Sound. Welcome, Nancy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Pat. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for putting together all this information because I think it is so important and helpful for municipal leaders. I've been asked to talk a little bit about energy use in the town of Mamaroneck, and then later we're going to speak more specifically about community choice aggregation in each of our communities. The town of Mamaroneck has been really active in trying to reduce our energy use in order to reduce greenhouse gases and participate in improving the climate change situation, as well as saving money. And some of the things that we've done in order to reduce our energy use, well, some have been very high tech and some have been very low tech. One of the first low tech things we did was say that we were going to close our town center twice a week. And we were going to ask everyone to consolidate the meetings that happen in the town center to only 2 nights a week so that we could actually shut down the building and turn off all the systems. That's pretty low tech. But then in 2014, we implemented an energy performance contract. And that is a tool that's available to all municipalities through New York state law that allows you to actually make large renovations and improvements to capital and infrastructure with an eye toward improving energy performance. And you can do it through one contractor. And that's the beauty of it for municipalities. And there's another great advantage to it as well. There are guaranteed energy savings with a energy performance contract. So we decided, because we had to renovate our ice rink in the town of Mamaroneck, and the ice rink is the largest energy user in the town, that we wanted to do it in a more sustainable, energy efficient way. And as we looked into the energy performance contract option, we realized we could take advantage of this and look at our town center, firehouse, and streetlights as well. So we upgraded the mechanical equipment, made some changes to the building envelopes, and in the case of the streetlights, changed all the streetlights to LED lights, all through an energy performance contract. That energy performance contract was done with Honeywell. It's for 20 years, and there's guaranteed energy savings each year. And if we don't make those energy savings, Honeywell actually writes us a check for the difference. So those savings, of course, go toward paying the interest and principal of the borrowing that we did in order to make these changes. But these were upgrades that we had to do no matter what. And it was a really, really efficient, interesting, and beneficial way to do it. We also conducted a Solarize campaign many years ago, encouraging residents to look into putting solar panels on their homes. We have just completed a community solar project in the town on the roof of that ice rink. And the community solar project provides revenue to the town because we are leasing the roof to the contractors who built the community solar project. And we first marketed that community solar opportunity, meaning a 10% decrease in your electric bill, to the low and moderate income residents of the town of Mamaroneck. We wanted to make sure that they had the advantage to take advantage of it first. We have installed 4 electric charging vehicle stations in the town of Mamaroneck, working with New York State on getting partial financing for those electric vehicle charging stations. And we are have several electric vehicles in the town, several hybrid vehicles. We are now working with the Clean Energy Communities program to purchase 2 additional electric vehicles. I'm very proud to say that we are the ranked third in the state in the on the Clean Energy Communities program. That makes me very proud. There's a lot of competition going on in that top 3. We also recently conducted a demand response campaign and a community solar campaign, reaching out to residents to inform them of these opportunities and to encourage them to participate. We also adopted the New York Stretch Energy Code recently. And so I am always looking for ways that we can be a leader in reducing our energy in the town, because I feel like it sets a great example for the residents themselves, makes them feel proud of our community, shows the pathway for our sister communities in the state, and it saves us money. I mean, if we can use less energy, that saves us money. And that is really a great part of it. And of course, I am so interested in our reductions in greenhouse gases and trying to take some effort in combating climate change. You know, I really appreciated Brad's quote from de Tocqueville this morning, because I too, of course, as a town supervisor, believe that local government is, well, I'm going to say the most important level of government, because we really are the ones who have our boots on the ground and can make changes and really relate the most to our residents. So those are some of the things we've done. I'll give you some numbers though, that we also try and track our energy use. And if you look at our reduction in energy use from 2014 to 2020, we reduced it by over 5 million kBTUs, which is pretty great. And 439 metric tons of CO2 were removed. So I'm very pleased with that. Okay, do you want me to talk about CCA now as well? I guess so. Okay.
You absolutely can, but remember, we're going to delve into a deep dive soon enough too.
Okay, so I'll just do the overview then. I didn't, you know, what I neglected to mention in all of that is that we have been part of the community choice aggregation program in Westchester County called Westchester Power. It's part of the Sustainable Westchester program. I happen to be co-chair of the board of Sustainable Westchester, and we've been in it from the beginning, which is now 4 years. The program has 28 municipalities participating in it, and it represents about 115,000 residents and small businesses throughout the county, which is great. And I want to show the next slide, which shows the, no, maybe my other slide didn't get in then, of Mamaroneck. That's okay. It just, Sustainable Westchester has provided us with information that shows in Mamaroneck town. And of course, we're one of the most confusing municipalities in the state, like many others. We're an unincorporated area of the town, but we have one village of Larchmont in the town, as well as half the village of Mamaroneck. So just in the unincorporated area, though, of the town of Mamaroneck, in participating in the CCA program, we've chosen the renewable energy source. And that has not been, those numbers of what energy has been saved have not been included in the energy information I've given you today. But that is the single most important effort that's been done in our community and has saved the most energy, reduced the most greenhouse gases, and really has been a great program for our community.
Thank you, Nancy. It's quite a record of achievement. All right, next we'll hear from Robert Alberti. He is the Director of Finance and Chief of Staff for the town of Clarkstown, a new clean energy community. He supports Supervisor George Homan in these roles. Robert manages the town's $147 million operating and capital budgets and presents these to the town board and to the public. He exercises oversight and direction for all town department operations, and he manages $12 million in grant contracts presently. Clarkstown is working with Jewel Community Power to form a CCA. Welcome, Robert. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. And obviously, I'm here on behalf of Supervisor George Homan, who couldn't make this presentation. He's the gentleman you see there at the bottom being filmed by the Discovery Channel. And I guess I'll start there. That's since 2016, the town converted a former landfill in 13 acres of solar installation on a former landfill. There's 8,744 solar panels on that landfill. And it was the first such project in New York State, you know, that conversion from landfill to solar field. And the renewable energy that's been produced at that facility, you know, it powers approximately 650 homes annually. And the Discovery Channel, they really did their homework and reached out to us. I remember getting a note from Supervisor Homan saying, you know, do you want to, can you make sure they actually want to film me and put me on the Discovery Channel? And sure enough, they did. And it just aired this past Saturday on Discovery Channel and a couple of their other affiliate channels. So if you happen to have Discovery Channel or even Discovery Plus, you know, you might run into this documentary about how solar and wind farms are being utilized across the country by municipalities as well as the private sector to, you know, reduce greenhouse gases and to generate some green on their own. Just other things that Clarkstown's done, just like Mamaroneck, in 2018 converted 3,873 streetlights and 183 decorative streetlights to LEDs, and the greenhouse gas emission savings there are like eliminating the annual electricity use from 217 homes. And I can tell you that when I look at the spending in our street lighting budget from that time to today, and you know, we're about to adopt our budget next week, which is up to now $154 million, but $1 million in savings just on electrical costs related to our street lighting, which I think is really remarkable. And you know, Supervisor Homan has continued to, you know, move the chain, so to speak, on a number of these issues. Last year, you know, we did a couple of rather significant things. We installed 2 electric vehicle charging stations, which you can see right there in that photo. And I'm told that's like removing 2 cars from the road per year. We're looking to expand on that. We have 4 community centers. We have a number of parks, and we're looking to make electric vehicle charging stations a part of all of our capital expenditures at those facilities going forward. And the key thing, and I think the thing that we're talking about today, I mean, we're going to talk about community choice aggregation. We opted to do the 100% renewable, and it's supplying 7,314 residential and small commercial customers. And it's the equivalent of powering about 676 homes annually on renewable energy. And the savings to those ratepayers as of last month was cumulatively $470,000. And I think the thing I'll touch on when we get to speak more about it in detail, I really think that the consumer protection aspect of CCA is extremely important. And, I can talk a little bit more about that. Another cool thing we've actually done, and I'm sitting in a room that has them, we have these motion sensor LED lights that we've installed in our town hall. We also have them across the street at our police and justice court. And it's kind of cool when I'm here late at night, as you walk through the hallways, it's like, you kind of feel like maybe you're like Darth Vader walking through the hallways, because it just sort of do, 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 do. You kind of keep walking down the hallways, and, you kind of feel the power of one individual walking through a dark to light corridor. But besides that, I look forward to expanding a little bit more on the CCA program and our experience in discussing, in basically promoting it to the public, and what I feel the benefits have been to the town outside of just the cost.
Fantastic. Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate it. All right. So next up, oh, Nancy, we found your slide. It had slipped in the wrong place. We will have it in the right place when it goes out. It came to us a little on the late side. So next slide should be introducing Deputy Mayor John Waddick, Village of Lima. John served in government in his early years, but then came back after a long career at Monroe Community College, where he chairs the engineering, science, and physics department. John likes to say that he wins over doubters with spreadsheets by showing the dollar savings from energy reductions. Under the Clean Energy Communities program, Lima has completed benchmarking, unified solar permit, high impact actions, and has been awarded a New York State DEC grant for an EV charging station. He's enjoying his role as an educator and an advocate for the newest HIA that Lima is tackling, community choice aggregation. Welcome, Deputy Mayor Waddick.
Well, thank you. Let me just say this, first of all. Probably most of you are wondering, how do you get this started, and can we do it in our community? Let me just tell you a little bit about Lima, and I think you'll see that if it can be done here, it can be done anywhere. Lima is a small village of 2,000 people, about 15 miles south of Rochester. Our median household income is $60,000, so we're not wealthy. It's a very conservative area. It's Donald Trump won handily here. Okay, so it's not, when we started this process 4 years ago, it wasn't like there was a lot of community interest or interest on the board. In fact, I ran in 2018 specifically on a platform of community choice aggregation and doing other energy things. I figured, well, it's a Hail Mary. I don't know if I'm going to get elected, but I want everybody to know that, if they do elect me, this is what I'm going to do. So by a margin of 9 votes, I slipped in. I'm the only non-Republican on the board in our town or in our village. So anyway, we're starting this process, and I had read about the Westchester Power, and I'm all gung ho, and I'm thinking, okay, we're going to get this in Lima in no time flat. So then I start talking about it, and I see these like blank stares of other people on the board who aren't that interested. So I figured I have to try to get little accomplishments done at a time. So the first thing we did, and Brad had talked about the NYSERDA local consultants that they have. And here in Rochester area, we have the Greater Finger Lakes Regional Planning Commission, and they were very helpful and came down to a meeting, kind of just broke the ice and said how you could do some things. So one of the, the far-reaching items was CCA. That was the ultimate thing I wanted to get done. But that was far off. So we did little steps along the way to get going. But the first thing I got everyone to agree to was passing the CCA enabling legislation, which gives local power to be able to, to administer a CCA. And, there's a little bit of reticence about it, but I just said this, hey, all it's doing is giving us power to enact this if we want, but it does not force us to do it. So with that, People said, well, if it's something we don't have to do, but it's just something we could do, no problem. So step one, we got it done. All right. Then it was, okay, well, since we have the legislation, this is a meeting or two down the road. Now that we have this, why don't we just choose an administrator just in case we do it? And we'll have a contract that just says we're signing up for the agreement for 18 months. If we don't get something that we like, we don't have to do it. And I told everybody on the board, it said, okay, here's the specs. Okay, if it's not 100% renewable and people in Lima can save some money, even if it's 1 cent, okay, we won't do it. Okay. And, never did I ever mention greenhouse gases, because if I did, it would have been no dice. And that's why I talk about, spreadsheets. It's all about the cost. It's all about the cost. Who cares about the future 100 years of this, world? But anyway, let's get to it. So I said, look, we're never going to do it unless it saves us some money. So they said, okay, fair enough. Okay, we'll go in. We'll see if we can get this done. Well, our 18-month term went by, and we couldn't find anything that could save us any money. So it didn't look very promising. So time went on, and luckily we had the great fortune to be working with Jewel Energy and Rocktricity, and they kept poking around and trying to find something that might work for us, and they came up with an opt-out community solar opportunity for us. And this was the whole difference, okay, because here was something that would save everybody 10% or up to 10%, somewhere's around 8 to 10%. So I said, hey, we've got this opportunity. Now, at the same time, I knew we could get that because that was just pure savings. The harder thing was going to be the 100% renewable energy. Okay, because we went out and got a bid for that, and that was a higher cost, okay, than the default supply from National Grid. So if that was all we had was just 100%, renewable CCA, it would never get passed. Because remember, the thing I promised, okay, although I was willing to break a promise to get 100% renewable, but they weren't. I said, it's going to have cost savings. So by coupling, and this was the whole key to getting it done, it really was, okay, it was coupling a opt-out community solar with the 100% renewable, okay? So the renewable supply was going to cost about 1 cent more per kilowatt hour at the time compared to the benchmark. But when we brought in a 10% discount on the entire bill, it was a net positive gain for consumers. So we went forward and were able to go forward with our 100% renewable supply and our opt-out community solar. So those are in the process of getting started right now. But I will say also, NYSERDA there and Brad, that the clean energy community incentives along the way were very strong nudges to do the right thing. Okay. For our size community, we're up to 4,500 points. So we've got 30,000 in the leadership round. But as soon as Sue Smith gets me the spreadsheet for our community solar, we'll be at 5,000, and that's going to bring $70,000 into Lima. Now, maybe for the town of Mamaroneck, that's nothing, but the village of Lima only has a tax levy of about $500,000. So $70,000 is a big deal in Lima. And, when there was a little bit of pondering about, should we go with 100% renewable or should we just go with the 50%? I said, look, you're going to leave $70,000 on the table if you don't go with the 100,000. It's just another little incentive, okay, to get people who really don't want to do this to do it. So we got it. And the other plus on this whole thing was with our community solar, as I think Brad was saying earlier, because it reduces the cost, the soft cost so much in customer acquisition, Joule Energy was able to negotiate in so the Village of Lyme would receive a sustainability grant, which is going to be in the vicinity of about 30 to 40,000, which we're going to use for, you know, rejuvenating our street trees. So, you know, overall, it's been made to work here in very conservative and not very wealthy place. And I think the key going forward is trying to couple the community solar with the 100% renewable. But I'm a little bit fearful seeing that utilities are in the process of trying to take the power of community solar away from local, you know, municipalities and take that power to themselves. And I will just say this, if that happens, it'll probably be a death knell for a lot of small communities, because then the economics just won't be there right now for 100% renewable. So, you know, we got it done. You can get it done.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor Wadich. Great comments. We're so happy to have a village of Lima's size in the mix here, explaining how they got it done. So that's wonderful. All right, so you've mentioned Rocktricity and Sue Hughes Smith a few times. Let's hear from Sue. She is the founding member and part owner of Rocktricity, which was formed to advocate for CCA in the Genesee Finger Lakes region. Sue has taught environmental studies and energy policy for 20 years at local colleges and universities, and she's worked in environmental advocacy at the state, local, and federal level, co-founding a climate advocacy organization. At Rocktricity, Sue manages operations, municipal relations, and the company's relationship with Joule Community Power. Welcome, Sue.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate you putting on this webinar and for everyone attending. I'm Sue Hughes Smith, and we can switch slides. That'd be great. And the role, if you click, I think you'll see it come in. The role of Rocktricity is as local program manager. So we are not a CCA administrator, but we work with Joule Community Power, who is the approved New York State CCA administrator. And we work specifically with them because of Joule's commitment to 100% renewable CCA programs. So my team went into this as an advocacy, kind of from an advocacy background, looking for solutions to climate change and seeing CCA as a really powerful tool that starts with electricity supply, but does not end there, but enables or empowers communities to continue to take steps towards dealing with efficiency and incorporating demand management, hopefully clean cars like Westchester Community Power has done, and so forth. We see it as a really powerful tool. So my team works with local governments to help them implement and launch community choice aggregation programs by bringing them into a relationship with Joule Community Power. And then we help implement the program by conducting the community outreach and education that's required by DPS. And then we assist residents with enrollment change requests, whether people are looking to join the program or exit the program, have questions about how the program works or their bills. My team staffs a call center, and we work with our community on a daily basis. Next slide. So we're serving a variety of communities. We have Rochester Community Power, which is just the city of Rochester, Monroe Community Power, which are the 4 communities you see listed there, Gateway Community Power, and Finger Lakes Community Choice. And I just want to point out that there's a wide variety of communities, from conservative Lima to pretty progressive city of Rochester, very close by, but with different goals, with different needs, with different language that you need to use in order to move programs forward. But in every case, communities successfully implement programs when the leadership believes it's the right thing to do. And really grateful for Deputy Mayor Waddick for his leadership, particularly in the village of Lima. Definitely would not have been accomplished without him. And I think that's really true in every community. And all these of the communities we serve, they are involved in different ways and to different degrees. For example, the village of Brockport and Lima could implement the opt-out community solar specifically because National Grid was ready to move forward with that pilot program. Whereas our communities in the RG&E territory, NICEAG territory are still waiting for some, next steps to deal with regulatory hurdles, waiting for full implementation to make that a reality, but we're confident it will be coming soon. The town of Brighton, for example, has just a supply program, and just in the first 9 months of operation, the town of Brighton is saving collectively, $230,000 because they accepted a rate during the pandemic. It was very competitive. And as the economy is rebounding in comparison to, the default supply, the town of Brighton has a fantastic electric rate. And whereas the city of Rochester went to bid just 6 months later, they moved forward with a program that has a very competitive rate with RG&E right now, just launched in January. So I look forward to seeing how that plays out, whether we break even or do a little better over the long term. But if you're ideologically motivated, and then you can get it done. That's really the key message. Okay, next. So challenges, education for the local governments themselves and for residents. As it happens, a lot of people are just not that familiar with their energy bills. And it's hard to move communities forward unless they understand what the current situation is and the advantages of change. So there is a lot of opportunity and a lot of need to help people understand what is the grid, how is it operating, how is that reflected on the bills, kind of as Jeff Demansky was indicating earlier. Then communication of program updates and changes. So again, if people aren't looking for information, it's you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, so to speak. Those challenges continue throughout the program, finding effective ways to communicate with the program participants. The state regulatory changes, as I mentioned before, sometimes we're waiting for those to come through before we can move forward with more exciting programs like the opt-out CDG. And then just general communications between the suppliers and the utilities and the customers. Sometimes customers end up with multiple messages that are not well coordinated because the utilities have to comply with their rules and they aren't able to be as flexible as the suppliers. So there are communication challenges, and the more a municipality is involved in including this communication in their municipal communications with residents, the easier it is for folks to know where to find that information. My team regularly gets calls that says, oh, I have this letter, and this letter from the mayor or from the supervisor said to call you with questions. And so directing all the questions to the single point of communication has been really helpful in addressing any misunderstandings about the program. Next. There are lots of benefits. I think most of these have been addressed. So just briefly highlight that it's a tool for effective change, that it allows access to the Clean Energy Communities grant funding when properly done. It can meet your community's goals for sustainability. You can expand the features over time. It allows residents to access affordably priced electricity supply. And it guarantees savings through solar credits if you implement that portion of it. Next. Here's my contact information, or my team's contact information if you would like to reach us.
Thank you so much, Sue. That was great. Thank you. All right, well, so this is just a last slide. It's not quite as nice as Brad's information, which we have been putting in the chat, but the heart and soul of this program is the community coordinators. And so simply you can Google NYSERDA Clean Energy Community Coordinators, and this is what will come up. So that's just there as a reminder. And now we are going to have a group discussion. I'm also, of course, the timekeeper, so I have to say that I'm going to encourage something like lightning round answers, something along the spectrum of lightning round, so we can get to the questions, because we do have some nice questions as well. Certainly, you know, everybody has touched on how you got here, how your community came to embrace a community choice aggregation. But I think the best part of these webinars, to my way of thinking, is that every time we have people join us who are really just starting out. They're just starting to think about what we're suggesting. And so we always want to make sure that our answers include them as well. So if I could start maybe with Nancy, what steps did you take when you thought about moving toward community choice aggregation? You know, in how another community would go about this?
I introduced it to my town board, and it was a new concept at the time. It had not been done in New York State before, and Sustainable Westchester was working on creating the first community choice aggregation program in the state. Brad was involved with us at that time, and it was a really steep learning curve because it was a brand new concept for everyone. And so we did a lot of talking about it, and we had different people come in to talk to us about it so that we could get a better understanding of it. And that was really the start. And then we had to work on the actual legal language of adopting a law. And that was also a big hurdle because it had never been done before. And the legal wrangling that went on was difficult because each municipality has their own town attorney, village attorney, or corporation counsel. And all of those people were weighing in. So we had to coordinate some group phone calls. We didn't really have Zoom in those days. And we would try and address some of these issues because it was difficult having so many people put their input, give us input, but it was all segregated and all separated. And so we needed to bring it all together. I think that the world is in a better place right now for community choice aggregation. The whole state is. So I don't think it would be nearly as difficult. I mean, our situation really was because it was the first time it had ever been done in the state. So it combined both creating the program and getting people to understand what it was and participate.
Mm-hmm. You know, Nancy, you mentioned Brad. I just want to bounce back to you, Brad, for 1 second. What makes you such a wonderful leader for this effort is that you are the former sustainability director for the city of Yonkers, which is an energy standout in its own right. Can you just talk for a moment about, because you have that background, when you thought about messaging this rather complicated idea, what were some of the things that went through your steps in terms of putting this together so that towns, villages, large cities could get their arms around it?
Well, you know, it's a good question. I mean, there are some challenges with CCA, right? It's perceived to be complex. It's perceived to be time consuming. And then there's a perception that it's got an uncertain outcome. And but in thinking of those three challenges, you know, as time has gone on, you know, remember this is like regulated by the Public Service Commission. They oversee and they manage the rules for CCA programs and you know how they operate. And so, you know, communities are no longer inventing this program from scratch, like Nancy was saying. You know, they're choosing to participate in a program that has established rules and guidelines. And so when it comes to, is it complex? yeah, it's pretty complex when you know, open up the hood and you look at what is really happening. You know, you have to kind of have a sense of what are energy markets, what are these energy services companies. You know, you have to understand about deregulation. So it kind of gets a little complicated. But in actuality, CCA is an opportunity that's actually pretty turnkey. You can sign up with a CCA administrator. They understand all the issues and they walk you through the process to actually get you there. Now, is it time consuming? Well, it was very time consuming when you were in Nancy's situation because you had to invent all this stuff from scratch. But now you can pull a template legislation off our website. You can get a template RFP to select an administrator. You know, if you have the wherewithal, you know, you can kind of turn this stuff around actually pretty quickly. So that's the quick part of it. Now, the uncertain outcome, that remains an issue. I mean, you know, you don't know what the price of electricity is going to be from the utility. So when you're locking in a price of the CCA, you don't know if the utility price is going to be higher or lower over the course of the 2-year contract. What is the beauty of this opt-out community solar opportunity is that it gives you that 10%, regardless of what happens to the utility price. And you're going to get a 10% reduction, or 5 to 10% typically, and that allows it to have a much more certain outcome. So again, it's not complex. It's actually pretty straightforward. It's not necessarily time consuming because it's pretty turnkey. And then the uncertainty with the outcome gets resolved when you start to look at this opt-out community solar. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. Robert Alberti of Clarkstown, what I love about having you with us is that you're a finance guy. So as you looked at this opportunity with Supervisor Homan, what steps did you two organize? You have a complex community of many different sectors and that kind of thing. So how did you look at it and how did you message around it?
Great question. So actually, I have to thank Brad and Supervisor Seligson because, we were kind of, I was aware of the program having worked in Westchester County government for 8 years. So when we were approached, I knew right away about the success story that was across the river. So, thank you guys very much for making it as turnkey as a lot of aspects of it became. I think, Brad just touched on it. There is a little bit of uncertainty and you do have to overcome some skepticism. I think one thing we haven't touched on, but it sounds like Deputy Mayor of Lima, touched on it. I mean, I would say Clarkstown's, not quite Lima, but it's not quite Mamaroneck either. We're kind of somewhere a little bit in the middle politically. That being said, it's a large community. I think there's a lot of skepticism about any time that, the government is being seen as, sort of making a choice. So it is an opt-out. But, as the supervisor and I sat down and we were really, to be quite blunt, we were a critical part of the Rockland Community Power Program happening or not, because, we're the largest outside of Ramapo. We were the next largest town that had to, really have buy-in. And, looking at the success story at in Westchester County and sort of looking at what I see as a huge benefit, which is really having that locked in rate. Yes, you don't know from month to month whether O&R is beating us or not, though Jeff gets me the stats, but by and large, it's right there. And, with all the uncertainty in the energy market right now, or even in the past year, I mean, think about it. Last April, they were giving you, if you were willing to take a barrel of oil, they were going to give you $30 if you had room for it.
Right.
And that,
Right. That's right.
And today, obviously, we see what's going on. And I got an email, just if I can briefly touch on this concept of the consumer protection aspect of it. I got an email from somebody, and they basically were told, or that, so you got to be very careful. There's still people out there that are going to look to take advantage. But, somebody's trying to lock in people with cold calls. We know all this, for a 5-year fixed contract, 13 cents per kilowatt hour. All right. Our current program for 100% renewable is 7.167 cents. They have a $200 exit fee. You can opt in and opt out at any time. So from a communication standpoint, and believe me, it's, you will get phone calls. I know as much as you try to push them on to Jeff and everybody, they're going to call. I'm sure Supervisor Seligson knows this. They're going to call you. They want to know just why it is that town has put its imprimatur on this program. And when you really get around to explaining it to people, getting them to understand how their billing works and the electrical supply portion of it, and the fact that as the utility customer, whether you're with Con Edison or in our case, Orange and Rockland, the decision's already been made for you by the New York State Public Service Commission. Now, what we've done is we brought it down to a local level, and we're trying to get people to save money, hopefully in the long run. If anything, though, in these unstable times, giving some stability. And I think there's a real value there that makes the program very worthwhile. So, to me, that's been really the really important aspect of all this. And yeah, it can be a hard sell. I mean, you go through a bit of a process, but at the end, I think people are very pleased with the program.
Mhm. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wadich, I had in my mind's eye, I see you with your spreadsheets, and they definitely show savings, and you're in a small community, but it's still 4,500 souls. So how did you, get the messaging out of the spreadsheet into the community?
Well, that's where having your administrator working with you, so Jewel and Rocktricity coordinated a lot of the community meetings, Zoom meetings, mailings, the public service announcements. So, like it was mentioned, it really was pretty turnkey. So it wasn't any great effort on our part other than to answer a few questions at meetings or phone calls. By and large, yes, there are some people who are interested, some people who are not, but the great majority, and this is why opt-out is so key, don't really pay attention. They don't read anything that comes in the mail. They don't even probably know. They just look at the bottom, level of their bill and say, okay, I got to pay that. So most people are apathetic in the community and don't pay attention. But it was a good product, and we got a lot of support from our administrator. So, like it said, a lot of these things have already been invented. Thank you, Westchester, for all the templates. So communities coming into it now, like Lima, have a really much easier time. All you need is the will to go forward. All the technical things can be done by your administrator.
Right.
Could I just add 2 points?
Please.
And that is, I think you have to communicate about it early and often. So if you're thinking about doing it, if you're starting to do it, if you're in it, you have to talk about it. I mentioned it at every single town board meeting. I put it in every newsletter. I made our office open to answer any questions about it. You don't want people to think there's something that's they're being taken advantage of it all. And that can be it. I mean, I was called a communist several times because, the government was taking over here. And that was the other C you left out, Brad. But, and you also have to be completely honest. And that is, it is not a formula or a program just to save money. That's not the primary objective. It's to give you a stable cost and price for your power. And it is to create the demand and use renewable energy. And so if you're completely honest and transparent about it, you talk about it all the time, generally people, they get it. And we had a pretty quiet transition for the residents, aside from the, incredible lift it was to help create the program at the time. And now it's true. Sometimes I get residents who are reading their power bill for the first time in 4 years, and they see it and they call me, they start screaming and yelling. And I say, where have you been? This has been in place for a long time and it's benefited you.
Right. All right. Now we're in our final minute of this program. So you may have seen in the chat, in the Q&A, I deputized Jeff Demansky, subject matter expert, bar none, and he's furiously typing away, answering your questions. If we missed any, we will follow up with them. But in our last question, lightning round, as I said before, we always attract some people who are brand new to the topic, and they're our favorite attendees. So lightning round, starting with, let's see, starting with John Waddick, real quick. After we all hang up from this call, if someone's interested in CCA, what's the first thing they should do? Go.
They should probably contact their regional coordinator for the clean energy communities.
Good answer. Robert Alberti, how about you? Anything to add there?
I actually see Carla Castillo's on the call, so I just want to give her a shout out. She's been very helpful.
Yeah.
But no, that's probably the best way to go about it. And, you know, to look to other communities and reach out to us and, you know, look to us as a resource to, you know, talk you through the process, the communications aspect of it. And, you know, like I said, I mean, we're believers in it, obviously. I wouldn't be here and, you know, supervisor wouldn't have told me to participate.
Right, exactly. All right, last word, Brad Tito.
Just, you know, I think you know, this is a program that potentially aligns with the values of your community. And that's a really powerful proposition. You know, yeah, we talk a lot about dollars and cents, and that's certainly important. But I find that, you know, the 100% renewable, it really does appeal to a lot of people out there who say, you know, finally, you know, my community is doing something important that I can really stand behind. So I'll just leave it with that. Good luck on your journey. We're here to help. Reach out to your coordinator. We'll get you everything you need to take the next steps. And even if you don't want to move forward with it, we'll help you in any way we can. So thank you very much, Pat, for coordinating this call and for all the speakers and for sharing your stories. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. And I believe in our audience, you all heard from me through cleanenergycommunities@gmail.com. So if you have a burning question that we didn't address, drop me a line and I'll pass it on. Thank you all very much and have a great afternoon. Bye now.
Thank you.